Here, we're looking at a figure made out of Parian marble known as the Peplos Core in the Acropolis Museum in Athens.
Exactly, and this is known as a peplos kore because she is wearing a peplos. A peplos is an ancient Greek costume, a rectangle of cloth, often linen, that is pinned at the shoulders and then falls down.
In addition, a kore is a female figure that is clothed and the counterpart to the male koros, who was nude. Both kore and koroi were found in great numbers during the Archaic period.
It is a small sculpture and it is found in the Acropolis.
Exactly, Anagloria.
Kore figures were normally offerings to the goddess Athena, brought interestingly by men.
However, with recent research, we have found that this might not be a representation of a young woman at all. This might be a goddess.
With all of the kore that were found, this figure is the only dressed this way.
Because what she is wearing is so unusual and is similar to sculptures of a goddess, there is a belief that it is not an offering, but a goddess herself, perhaps Artemis or Athena.
In addition, this sculpture indicates a subtle sense of movement to the figure.
This is very much an archaic figure.
She does wear that archaic smile.
But we have to remember that that smile was not meant to be an expression of emotion or happiness, but rather a symbol of well-being.
Of being transcendent, of being ideal, a figure that represented ideal femininity.
Which was beautifully expressed when the sculpture was new and still brightly painted.
The ancient Greeks thought the human body was perfect. The individual itself was not perfect, but rather the proportions of every part of the body.
We are looking at an ancient Roman copy of a Greek bronze original by the artist Polykleitos, who sought out to demonstrate just that. We can even see how the sculpture seems to originally be holding a spear in the left hand while the right hand is relaxed.
Precisely, but this 4th century sculpture is not about warfare.
Yes, its muscular figure represents the perfection and ideal human form. You can even see how asymmetrical his body is, with his shoulders and arms aligned, and with his hips and legs balanced, creating a gentle S-curve to the figure. This is known as contrapposto.
Exactly, and this was found in a palestra in Pompeii, which was a place where athletes would work out. This must have been a really good inspiration.
Yes, in fact, we may know this figure as the Dirophoros, but Polykleitos called it the canon, which was the standard of beauty for artists to base their work off.
Totally. Even the Romans idealized the Greeks, and wealthy citizens demanded copies of Greek sculptures.
Absolutely. But overall, this sculpture truly showed how the Greeks were moving from the stiff renderings that had been so characteristic of the archaic period, such as the chorus, but instead they began to understand the human body and physiognomy.
Truly, and we can see how these sculptures have influenced our art today.
Located in Athens, the Parthenon is one of the biggest accomplishments of the Greeks.
It was constructed under the time of Pericles and it was entirely made of marble, which was a representation of their wealth and status.
This building became known as the birth of democracy because of its incredible architectural elegance.
Yes, it was constructed in the 5th century, which was considered the high classical movement.
Precisely. We continue to use this architectural style in buildings we construct today.
As well as the Phidian style, which was used in honor of the sculptor Phidias, who was a big part of the classical style. When we see this building, it is truly in the image of a Greek temple.
The building features the Ionic frieze, the triglyphs, and the metopes, which were all representatives of the Doric style.
Each of the 92 metopes were decorated on all sides with scenes from Greek mythology.
Some of the battles being Greeks versus Amazons, Greeks versus Trojans, Greeks versus Titans, and Greeks versus Lapiths.
The Parthenon also had the east and west pediments, a pediment being the triangular upper part of the front of the building, typically on top of the columns.
The west pediment represented the contest between Poseidon and Athena, leaving the Athenians to choose the god they wanted to represent them.
As for the east pediment, representing the birth of Athena, which according to Greek mythology, Zeus gave birth to Athena after a terrible headache prompted him to call for help.
However, the most important contest being Athena versus Poseidon, in which it is said that Poseidon strikes a rock, and from it came the salt of the sea, which represented their naval superiority, while Athena gave them an olive branch in representation of the land of prosperity and peace.
Yes, in continuation, we can also see the Ionic frieze, which showed the Pythianic procession that was central celebration in Athens during classical times.
Yes, in its time we can see that the Parthenon was used as the temple for the goddess Athena, virgin goddess and patron of Athens. We even see a melted sculpture in representation of Athena in the center of the Parthenon.
However, it was later used as a state treasury, yet we can continue to see the exclusivity needed to enter such a building.
Yes, in order to enter the Parthenon, you had to be a citizen of Athens and a person of status. The requirements being that you had to be male, born from two Athenian parents, and over 18 years old.
Women, slaves, medics, and children were not allowed to become citizens.
This form of art played a crucial role in the building and planning of further civilizations to come, with buildings such as the Pantheon, the White House, and many more. Here we are looking at the Wing to Victory of Samothrace in the Louvre.
Exactly, this dates back to the 2nd century CE or after Christ, which was during the Hellenistic period.
This Parian marble statue stands at 9 feet, which is exceptionally large.
Precisely, and this is actually known as the Nike of Samothrace because it was found on the island in the north of the Aegean Sea.
Yes, it was found in a sanctuary in the harbor.
Exactly, and actually she never stood on the front of a real boat.
No, she stood on the front of a stone ship that was within a temple environment.
Precisely, so she is the goddess of victory, the messenger goddess who spreads the news of victory.
Yes, in fact, some of the reconstructions that were made of the statue demonstrated her as a herald with a horn. This piece of artwork really impacted Western art.
Exactly, we can really see it especially because during the Hellenistic period the Greeks moved from a very reserved, high classical style to a very dramatic and explosive style.
Truly, this work of art is filled with an energy that accentuates motion and emotion. She's grounded by her legs, but strides forward. Her torso lifts up and her abdomen twists. Her wings move back.
Precisely, it is almost as if you can feel the wind that is surrounding her, which then creates the wet drapery look to the sculpture.
This war monument that commemorates not only the goddess Nike, but also a naval victory, is a prime example of a Hellenistic work of art. Bronze was really expensive and was a really precious metal to the Greeks. In fact, many of their sculptures were made out of bronze, so they could later be melted and made into currency or weapons.
Which is why it is really rare to find original copies of Greek sculptures, but here and there we get the opportunity to see a Greek original.
Exactly, just like the seated boxer, a Greek Hellenistic sculpture from about 100 BCE.
Yes, and actually, this is the last phase of an ancient Greek art, because the Hellenistic period will end when the Romans conquer Greece.
Precisely. But being one of the only bronze sculptures left, we actually get to see how the Greeks made their large scale sculptures.
Exactly. It was known as lost wax casting, which was a hollow cast and the process by which duplicate metal sculpture is cast from an original sculpture.
Yes, in addition, during this period, we see an expansion of the subject matter that we usually think of Greek art.
Precisely. Here we can see them breaking away from the traditional idealized heroic male nude to a more older and more experienced figure.
Yes, by sitting with his torso collapsing inwards and his head down, the look of defeat on his face is expressed, which represented the wisdom and humanity of the Greeks. It has also been suggested that the statue was attributed with healing powers and that it could have been made to represent the culture of boxing in ancient Greece.
And although his body is full of cuts and bruises, his body is still beautiful, powerful, and muscular.
Overall, the seated boxer shows how the Greeks began to explore a much wider variety of styles and how they impacted the stylization and characteristics of further civilizations such as the Romans. All of these works of art, the Peplos Core, the Cannon Spear Bearer, the Parthenon, the Nike of Samothrace, and the seated boxer, truly demonstrated what the Greeks deemed important: power, beauty, wealth, status, wisdom, and perfection, and its meaning hasn't changed since.